The anticipated Judicial Commission of Inquiry into state capture in South Africa is underway. The Gupta family is accused of irregularly influencing former President Jacob Zuma and his son Duduzane. Former Head of Government Communications Themba Maseko, ANC MP Willie Mathe-bula and former Deputy Minister of Finance Mcebisi Jonas are slated to testify in the first round of hearings. The Commission is tasked with investigating and making recommendations into all allegations of state capture, corruption and fraud in the public sector. The Commission was instituted by then President Jacob Zuma in early January. Well, to discuss this further, we are now joined by Dr. Dale T. McKinley in Johannesburg in South Africa. He's an independent writer, researcher and political activist based in Johannesburg. Thank you very much for joining us. How is the inquiry going?
Thank you. Well, it's just the first day today, so it hasn't really gotten underway. What is happening today is that the leaders of evidence for both the prosecution, in this case, the state, and the defense will present their cases, or at least give their introductory remarks. And then from tomorrow, I understand, they'll be calling witnesses. So it's a bit too early to say. It's just sort of the opening gambits, you could say, of the commission. We'll get into the real business of the commission tomorrow when some of the heavyweights begin to testify.
Okay, so the real business tomorrow with witnesses. How long do you think it's likely to last?
Well, actually, the chair of the commission, Judge Zondo, requested, initially it was 6 months. The commission was given 6 months to complete its work. But he approached the High Court back in March this year and requested an extension to 24 months, in other words, 2 years. So that was granted by the court. So we can expect that this commission will proceed for at least another year and a half, if not potentially even longer, because there could be an extension. That's a substantial amount of time, and I would argue plenty of time to get to the bottom of what the commission is supposed to be dealing with.
Okay, so we may need to wait 2 years. What do you think are likely to be the outcomes?
Well, it's difficult to say, but one would hope that, first of all, the first thing is that South Africans would get to know a great deal more, and the world for that matter, about actually what did happen in terms of the influence not only of the Gupta family, but of the corrupt relationships that existed between state-owned enterprises and business deals that were given to various companies, and the depth of this, how far it went, the degree of influence of these families as well as others with the Zuma administration, and who was culpable for making decisions that wasted taxpayers' money, billions and billions of taxpayers' money. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing would be that even though the commission does not have the powers to prosecute, that the evidence that it would uncover would lead to prosecutions, or at least lead to some kind of court proceedings that would hold those people responsible. South Africans are very sick and tired of seeing all sorts of commissions over the years, but nothing ever coming of these commissions. So it would be hoped that in this case, the commission's work would lead to people being held responsible for looting of the state.
And finally, Dr. McKinley, what about the political implications on the ANC ahead of next year's vote?
Well, I think as listeners probably heard from your introductory remarks, it was President Zuma who was forced to implement this commission. He was very much against it, obviously, because it involves possibly even himself personally, as well as many of his supporters. President Ramaphosa, who has taken over the ANC, I think wants to distance himself from that. So I think he's going to use this commission not only as an airing of the kinds of corrupt relationships, but as a possibility of fighting the kind of internal battles within the ANC with the supporters of Zuma that is still raging within the party. So leading up to the elections, it's going to be very interesting. I think this commission could become a bit of a political football between the factions of the ANC, and it could end up hurting or helping, depending upon obviously what comes out of the commission and how the public sees it. But I think overall, people are very fed up in South Africa with what they perceive as corrupt relationships. And if President Ramaphosa can use this as saying we're turning a new leaf, we're not going to put up with these kinds of things, then I think he can gain some political capital. If he doesn't, it will hurt them at the polls.
Okay, thank you very much for your analysis. That was Dr. Dale T. McKinley there in Johannesburg.